Hello and welcome. You're listening to Ending Physician Overwhelm with Dr. Megan Mello. In this podcast, we look at why, as physicians, we often get stuck in feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and burnout, and how we can break out of toxic thought patterns. My hope is that each episode gives you an opportunity to heal and to get more clear on how you want to show up in your life and your work. And now, let's get started. Thank you so much for being here. My hope is that with this podcast, we can have more conversations about really the heart and soul of burnout and overwhelm and anxiety in physicians, get to really understand how we can make things better for ourselves right now without having to all leave medicine in one big herd. Certainly, leaving, changing, reflecting, all sorts of things are possible right now. But I want to give people hope that overwhelm and burnout and anxiety don't have to stay a way of life for physicians. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening and wanting to dig into this topic. It's an area that I have been interested in for quite a number of years now, and I'm so excited to be able to be here talking with you today. So I want to share a little bit about myself and about my story, because stories about our burnout, about our overwhelm and our anxiety are really how we start to connect and reduce shame and stigma about these experiences that we have. So I'm a family medicine physician, and I'm married with 2 children. And my worst period of burnout happened several years ago. And as I'm speaking right now, we're in March 2022, which means that we have just entered we've completed 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're heading into this 3rd year and hoping that things are better. But of course, we're not guaranteed anything. But my story of burnout really, and this journey that I've been on, really begins several years ago. And at the time, I was working in a busy primary care practice. I was doing clinical medicine as 0.5. I was teaching 0.3. I did some deliveries at a hospital that was halfway across town. And my children were 3 and 6, right? So there was a lot going on in my day-to-day. Of course, we can add in other stressors that were happening at the time, but really it was the day-to-day that was leading me to feel so emotionally exhausted and numb and overwhelmed that leads into my story. So what this looked like for me, working this job and having my young children at home, was tears that I could not stop. I would drive into work after doing all the mom things, and I would constantly be feeling late and rushed, and I would be crying every day on the way to work, thinking, how can I keep doing this? Everyone needs everything from me. I've got nothing left. And of course, a lot of these thoughts were unconscious. They were below the surface. I just knew that I felt horrible. I didn't sleep well. I certainly wasn't taking great care of myself. I just didn't have anything in the tank. And I remember one morning in particular. So the usual thing happened. I cried on the way to work. I, took some deep breaths, got out of the car, which felt harder and harder to do. And I walked into clinic, took some deep breaths at my desk. My medical assistant was rooming my first patient, and it was a patient I knew well. She was a few years older than me, had wrestled with really significant anxiety. And I remember my medical assistant came out of the room, handed me the chart, and said, "She's really in bad shape today." And my medical assistant walked off down the hall, and I stood there screaming in my brain, "What about me? I'm not doing well." And I remember this overwhelming sense of futility, of I can't do anything for anyone. But of course, what do we do? What do we do? We do the thing that we always do, right? We take a breath, we walk into the room, we move right into it because we're so well trained to do that. So I went into the room, I sat down, I opened the computer. She started talking and she started sharing her story, and she was crying and going through all the things that were happening. And I remember at one point that she paused. She looked at me and she could see that I had been crying, that my eyes were all red. And I remember she stopped and she asked, "Are you okay?" And I looked at her and I remember saying to her through gritted teeth, "I'm fine. Keep going." And it was so out of character. I remember her facial expression. She did keep going. And I sat there feeling horrible and trying my best to stay focused on what I needed to do, right? I'm charting, I'm listening to her, we're coming up with a plan, and eventually we finish the visit and she heads off down the hall. And I remember so well that I never felt so broken in my life as that moment. I thought, I do not have a single ounce of generosity left in my body. And generosity is something that I pride myself on. And so to not have any generosity left felt so wrong. It felt so out of character. I felt broken. And of course, I finished the day. Of course, I finished the week. And it just so happened that I was going to a physician wellness conference a week later. And I went and I cried a bunch there. And I heard about depression and burnout and yoga and meditation and all these things that were supposed to make it better. And I just remember having this sense like, that's not gonna make it better. But I came back from the conference. I remember I started therapy not long thereafter. At some point, I went to my doctor and got started on an antidepressant. And I did all these things. I took a little time off at one point, trying to think, would that make it better if I didn't go to work for a while? Would that help? It didn't. It gave me some time to sleep, but sleep was not the cure. So here I was, struggling with this burnout, struggling to feel better, struggling to, have a sense of feeling, fulfilled or happy with what I was doing. And therapy didn't help enough, and medicine didn't help enough, and time off didn't help enough. And I just didn't know what the answer was. And things settled out like they do, they calmed down like they do. And I remember sort of having this thought of, well, I just need to be tougher. If only I was stronger, I would just, get through this and move on. And, that's kind of what we do. And it's kind of what I did. But I never got past the feeling of being broken, that something was really wrong. And when I look back at that, I know now that nothing was wrong except for my thoughts. And really, those thoughts were things that I had been taught to think for all of my training. So nothing was wrong with me as a human being. My human self wanted to be able to sleep, to rest, to be able to eat lunch, to be able to go to the bathroom, to be able to play and enjoy time with my family, and feel my feelings. But in my training and in your training as a physician, you know that we are trained to tune out our feelings, to tune out our need for sleep and our other bodily needs, to eat when we're hungry and to use the bathroom when we need to use the bathroom, right? We are trained to be these sort of superhuman machines. We are trained to believe that our purpose, our worth, our value is tied to making other human beings better. And because we are trained that way, we are left with these thoughts that may be helpful when we are trying to take on these very important responsibilities as young people, but that when we continue to have the thoughts as we get out of training and we keep the thoughts for forever and ever, they really come back to harm us. And let me give you some examples here. The thought that your career in medicine should be enough satisfaction, enough sense of worthiness to overcome your human needs. That your sacrifice in the name of serving other humans means that you don't get to go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom. That you don't have time to eat when you're hungry because your patients are waiting and you've got all these charts to finish in your inbox and a bunch of messages from the nurse, and that's just more important than you putting food in your mouth. We have other thoughts that lead to a lot of distress, such as if we're feeling burned out, we feel like our employer should fix us. I had that thought for a really, really long time, and I kept getting madder and madder because I thought, why aren't they fixing this? But really, I had the thought that they should fix it. And they may have wanted to fix it, but until I could think something else, I put all the responsibility and all the power in their hands. And guess what? They didn't do it. Other thoughts that can be harmful to you, thinking that your worth is tied to how much you do for others, which means that if you are feeling unworthy, which is one of the symptoms of burnout, is this sense of futility that nothing you do matters. If you're feeling that way and you think that your worth is tied to how much you do for others, you will start doing more for others. You will ignore your own needs harder, and guess what happens with that? Thoughts like, my needs come last, always. And this is especially true for physicians who are parents or caregivers of some kind, right? We take care of the humans at work, and then we go home and take care of the humans at home. And when do we have time for ourselves? So there's lots and lots and lots of these thoughts that we have picked up over the years of our training. And when we have those thoughts over and over and over again, right? Thoughts like medicine should be enough. I should feel happy that I get to do this. My employer should fix me. My worth is tied to how much I do for others. My needs come last. When we have those kinds of thoughts again and again and again, and sometimes we're aware of them and sometimes we're not, but they're happening over and over again, we start to believe them. And I would wager that most of us have been believing those thoughts in some capacity since we were medical students, and maybe even before. You know, we had to be perfectionists and people pleasers and gunners to get into medical school. It's only been more and more reinforced. And I raise this not to say that medical school is evil or residency is evil, or even that our employers are evil, right? We can have lots and lots and lots of conversations about all of those different arenas, but I want to really drive home the point that those institutions, for whatever merit, have passed these thoughts down to us, right? Other human beings who were doing the work that, you know, we so desperately wanted to do as medical students and residents. They have passed down these thoughts to us about what it means to be a doctor, what it takes to be successful, you know, how to avoid failure at all costs, how to avoid shame at all costs. You know, we put our needs last, we always serve others. They have passed this set of thoughts down. And we, as excellent students, have adapted those thoughts, not adapted, we have adopted those thoughts so incredibly well that we now believe them. And so when we're feeling burned out, when we're stuck in overwhelm and stuck in anxiety and we can't relax, and we don't give ourselves permission to take care of our human needs, and we're always putting other people first, and we are so overwrought with all of the things going on. No wonder someone telling us, go do some yoga, go do some meditation, go take an antidepressant, doesn't work. We have to work on our thoughts. We have to start unlearning what we have learned and start to replace those toxic thoughts with things that serve us better, right? I can find incredible satisfaction from helping other humans as a physician, but that alone is not enough to create a full life, right? I need love, connection, rest, play, all the other things that the other humans need, right? My employer can't fix my burnout because if I'm still having thoughts about needing to overwork to prove my worth and needing to put others ahead of myself always, no amount of, you know, kind of HR related wellness programs is going to fix that thinking, right? If my worth is tied to how much I do for other people, and that's the thought I have, if I don't fix the thought, I will always work harder to serve other humans, always. And I'm not saying that we don't want to do a good job. I'm not saying we don't want to show up and be there for people who need us. But when we're always tying our worth to it, we will always lose. Because that's not the only value that we carry as human beings. When I keep thinking the thought that my needs always come last, those needs will never be met because there are too many other humans in the world who will present their needs to me in the form of patients, in the form of staff, employees, whatever it is, you know, my family, my friends, whatever else. There is no end to the number of people who could come at me with their needs. So if my needs always come last, my needs will never be met. I hope this helps to show you how our thinking needs to change to start getting out of thoughts around burnout and overwhelm and anxiety and these other things that we struggle with as very, very human people who do this particular kind of hard work that we do in medicine. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. And I know that if you're listening, outside of my mom, who will listen, and my friends who I will force to listen to this podcast, most of you are people that I don't know, or I didn't directly ask you to listen. So I know that you've come here to listen either because you were searching for a podcast, or you've been feeling overwhelmed, or somebody pointed it out to you. You found somehow a podcast that said ending physician overwhelm, and you thought, I need to listen to that. You didn't do that because that sounded like fun. You did that because something in that title resonated, or someone said, you need to listen to this. I think this is what's happening for you. So if you find yourself here and any of the thoughts that I shared today have been thoughts that you have had either consciously or unconsciously, something has resonated with you, I want you to start thinking about what is it about yourself that you have been feeling is wrong or broken or not normal about you as a physician, about how you're feeling, how you're struggling, symptoms of burnout and overwhelm. What have you been feeling is wrong with you? And then I want you to imagine how your life would be if you didn't have to feel that way anymore. What if you keep listening to this podcast, or you come and get coaching with me, or you take some other step that helps you to not feel like there is something wrong with you anymore? What would that create in your life? How would you show up in your work? How would you show up with your friends and family? How would you show up for yourself and taking care of yourself, your human body with its human emotions and its human physical needs? Imagine what would happen in your life if you could feel whole, if you didn't feel broken, if you didn't dread going to work or starting the day. Imagine what that would feel like. We're going to end there for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this very first episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. Again, my name is Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family medicine physician as well as a physician life coach. And I hope that this is just the start of our journey together. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day, and please join us again. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Ending Physician Overwhelm. If you learned something today or felt moved, please share this episode with a colleague. You can also learn more about me and my coaching practice by heading over to www.healthierforgood.com. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.